You married me. Random art.
I don't think she knows this.
Where is she? Oh,
I know. She didn't mean totally.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This is Left Bank Books reading, Joe Baumann reading with Danielle Coffyn. We are very excited to present this event tonight for two local authors. It is with your support that we are able to do the programming that we do. I'm going to try to talk slower on this coffee today, so I apologize. It is with your support that we are able to do the author events we do. When you show up, your presence is a gift. It is appreciated and thankful. But when you buy a book, it helps us keep our doors open. It helps us keep libraries funded with your taxpayer dollars. It helps keep the streets paved, parks free. And in today's age, these are important things that hopefully our tax dollars still go to. But we are thankful for your support and for supporting Left Bank Books as we celebrate 55 years in business. We do have a ton of author events planned for the rest of March and for April. We have some really incredible ticketed events that have been announced. There are like 2 tickets left for Bob the Drag Queen if you are Bob the Drag Queen inclined. But we did just announce, well, maybe it's been announced. B. Dylan Hollis, who is a very, very popular TikTok and social media star. We will be hosting him in June for his new cookbook, which features gooey butter cake as one of the recipes. So baking across America. So those tickets are online. I don't know if he's actually announced, so you might be the first people hearing about it. Excited. Tonight we are very pleased to present to you Joe Baumann and Danielle Coffyn. Joe is an author and chair of the MFA in Writing program at Lindenwood University. He will read and discuss his newest book, A Thing Is Only Known When It Is Gone. And Danielle Coffyn is celebrating the release of her book of poetry, If Adam Picked the Apple. A little bit about these books. About A Thing Is Only Known When It's Gone, I'm going to read just a tiny bit of it, and then a blurb from one of my professors. These stories in A Thing Is Only Known When It Is Gone are told in lyrical, often startling prose. Baumann's experimentation with the surreal avoids gimmick and easy metaphor, keeping the complexity of the characters at the center. The strange worlds of these protagonists distort and reflect our own back to us, like the funhouse mirrors and morphology that begin to change the fabric of reality. Robin Becker, the author of Brains, a Zombie Memoir, says, "These stories are both deeply human and deeply weird. Like a queer Aimee Bender, Baumann tackles coming of age, sex, and love alongside floating houses, jogging ghosts, and broken hearts locked up in cages. In these surreal stories, the metaphoric is made literal." And If Adam Picked the Apple, Pulitzer Prize winning push cart.
What were your expectations?
Push. Danielle Coffyn's collection, If Adam Picked the Apple, is where accessible poetry meets profound craft and metaphor. Originally hailing from Belgium and now residing in St. Louis, Missouri, Coffyn blends her cultural background with her perspectives on the challenges faced by women today. From the complexity of aging and body image to the nuances of relationship and the weight of patriarchy, this collection invites readers to explore their own narratives through her relatable vulnerability. Now, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then you are going to clap wildly for them. Joe Baumann is the chair of the MFA program in Writing program at Lindenwood University. He is the author of Lake Drive, a novel, Where I Can Take You When There's Nowhere to Go, and Tell Me Stories. We do have copies of Tell Me Stories available for purchase tonight as well. And Danielle Coffyn has been weaving poetry and stories for as long as she can remember. A graduate of the University of Kansas and armed with English, French, and history degrees, she spent nearly a decade teaching before transitioning to the corporate world of learning and development. The start of the pandemic was the catalyst she needed to start putting pen to paper with the goal of sharing her writing publicly. Born in Belgium and raised in the Midwest, Danielle harbors a wanderlust she feeds by hosting nature and nurture hiking and writing retreats around the country focused on reconnecting to the self and one another through writing and spending time outdoors. She currently makes her home in St. Louis, Missouri with her son and dog. Without further ado, on behalf of Left Bank Books, would you please help me in welcoming our incredible authors?
Thank you so much. Again, did not want to pull it. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, perfect. So I have 7 poems that I'm going to read for you this evening. Stand on my toes. I'm vertically challenged. The first poem I'm going to read this evening is the poem that won a Pushcart Prize, and it is the title of the book, If Adam Hates the Apple. It's people either love it or hate it. I've gotten a lot of vitriol online for it. It went a little bit viral back in November. If Adam picked the apple, there would be a parade, a celebration, a holiday to commemorate the day he sought enlightenment. We would not speak of temptation by the devil. Rather, we would laud Adam's curiosity, his desire for adventure and knowing. We would feast on apple-inspired fare, torts, chutneys, pancakes, pies. There would be plays and songs reenacting his courage. But it was Eve who grew bored, weary of her captivity in Eden. And a woman's desire for freedom is rarely a cause for celebration. Yeah, the snacking. Okay. This next one was inspired by a elementary school poster that I grew up looking at all the time, called "Bloom Where You Are Planted." You'll remember that. That was everywhere. I hated it. So I rewrote my version. The title: "Bloom Where You Are Planted, or Don't." Sometimes a red maple seedling finds itself in the desert, and a star cactus has mistakenly been born in the rainforest. Perhaps you too require more sunlight, or water, or dirt. Perhaps you thrive in arid soil, craving constant dry heat. Not every place will feel like home. We do not fault the date palm for rotting as the bald cypress thrives in the swamp. Which is to say, if your roots decay and your leaves wilt, don't let an inhospitable climate determine your ability to grow. You put that
There's a cat.
That's wonderful. I invited it. It's just drawn to my poetry, I think. It's a good sign. This one is called Oysters. Nearly everyone I know is depleted. All right, I'll just start. Okay, she's my friend. We'll see after today. Oysters. Nearly everyone I know is depleted, worn down by the tempest of life. One friend is thinking of leaving her marriage. One quit her job to prioritize her daughter's health. Another watched his best friend stop breathing. I spent years wondering if I could survive the hornet's nest of my mind. So when silver linings are in short supply, I remind myself of the oyster. How despite the dogged determination of her shell, parasites intrude, threaten to damage her fragile flesh. How she secretes nectar, layer after layer of iridescent protection until the irritant is fully encased. How her growth is invisible, yet after 2 years she is left with a pearl. Tiny, imperfect, glorious proof that beauty too is born from the guts of survival. And you all tonight are going to get to hear a poem I wrote yesterday. So it's never been read before or heard, but it's one of my favorite things I've written. I wanted to share with you all this evening. It's like a little palate cleanser before the other three from the book. It's called Drought. The same week the car breaks down, we both fear unemployment. I treat the house for lice and melancholy, strip sheets and darkness from winter beds, stroll the neighborhood each morning to capture sunlight between infertile hands, my thirsty palms parched for laughter. We are in a joy drought, surrounded by pocked concrete and dehydrated grass. A weekend escape to the Smoky Mountains reminds us of resilience. Trout lilies and violets, elder spring siblings of azalea and foam flower bloom like weather spray. We color our dry gray tongues with sweet fried oil as a contrast, board our delight. Across the gravel road, 4 pit bulls trail our scent. Only one of us can outrun a dog, and we both know we won't leave me behind. That actually happened. My partner is a former college athlete, and he can run like 5-minute miles, and I cannot. So if it came down to the two of us, yeah, this one I wrote when I shared with some people that my friends and I were going to a rage room. I don't know if any of you have been to a rage room where you get to smash things. It's really cathartic. And I was told that they couldn't imagine me angry. So this was one of my friends that I went to the rage room is here with me tonight. It's called Sharks. They are surrounded by us. Millions of shark women camouflaged as goldfish. When we visit a rage room, they say, "We cannot imagine you angry." Flashbacks of outbursts at 13, 17, 20 spin through my mind before stopping at 23. Like my foremothers, tempered fury with famine. I pry my ribs open to reveal teeth lining each bone. One tooth for every moment I swallowed fire. Eventually, I ran out of hope. Eventually, we all. More. So this one is inspired by sort of the obnoxious expectations for women and how we're meant to age and the bombarding of just constantly trying to erase that. It's called Wild. Give me platinum strands, milky threads of aging intertwined with the sediment of youth. Give me stretch marks along thighs, one gleaming strand for each year this body survived winter. Give me scars and sunspots, proof of every season long. Give me laugh lines like the hyena, rooted canyons along eyes and mouth, impervious to wrinkle cream, so profound is my joy. My last one is the final poem of the book, which there are some darker ones in here. I wanted to end on a little bit of a hopeful note. So it's called What Are You Waiting For? What are you waiting for? There will be no call to adventure, no permission slip to flee the gilded cage. No one is coming. No savior, no prince, no fairy godmother. It may feel easier to stay for months, perhaps years. Fear is a shackle and walls offer the illusion of safety. But an albatross born in captivity always yearns for the sea, for open air, for miles upon miles of freedom to explore. When the ocean's tide tugs at restless blood, when bones sing a relentless song of fear, when staying feels like dying, she can bear it no longer. Then girls greatly, rusted with disuse, and steady yet determined, she takes to the sky.
Okay, thank
Thanks, Danielle, for reading. Before I read, I do have some thank yous to issue. First to Shane and Left Bank for hosting this. When I was working with Allie Shea, who I would also like to thank, she was the marketing public relations person at University of Wisconsin Press. When she was trying to help me arrange a launch event, she started with some of the libraries and had a really hard time getting in touch with anyone. And so she said, well, are there any bookstores around you that you would like to try? And I said, well, why don't you start with Left Bank Books? But their calendar is always really full. So I'm not going to be like mad if you can't get that to work. And like a day later, she emailed me. She's like, good news. They're available the week that your book comes out. And I said, great. So here we are. So I very much appreciate that. I also want to just give a quick shout out to Dennis Lloyd, the director of the University of Wisconsin Press, who was the first of several voices that had to say yes to this book. And then, story for later, he also said yes when he could have said no because a external reviewer did not like this book, and he found a different one. Yeah. So thank you to him for that. And then I also want to thank Tracy for her decor, and she's responsible for the bookmarks, which you will see perhaps how some of the components of those bookmarks have to do with the story I'm going to read, which is the title story of the collection, though originally when I proposed the book, it was not the title story of the collection. When I proposed the book, the title was Twilight and Hero Land, which is the name of the last story in the book. And when the book was accepted, the board of directors of the University of Wisconsin Press had some very useful editorial suggestions about a number of stories. And then one thing they said was, we don't really like the title. So they suggested I think of something else. And so I picked this story, which I think actually, it's been like 2 years since this book got accepted. And it just took a while to come out for a number of reasons, good reasons. It makes a lot more sense as a story. So I don't really need to contextualize anything in the story because I'm going to read the whole thing. It'll take you about 20 minutes, so feel free to get up and stretch. Wait through if you need to. The only thing I do want to say about this, for anybody who writes and knows that rejection happens all the time, the little anecdote I have about this story is, and I looked this up in I keep a spreadsheet of all of my stories and where they've been accepted, and especially where they have not, which is a much bigger spreadsheet than the first one. This story was rejected by 16 magazines. And then on a whim, I submitted it to a free to enter contest for horror, fantasy, science fiction, or just plain weird stories. So like, okay. And I won like $700, which was way more money than any of the magazines that I had submitted to that had said no, were going to offer. I obviously didn't because they said no. And now it's the title story in this collection. So that just tells you anything about taste. I don't know. Well, you get to decide whether those 16 magazines were the ones that had it right, or whether the one contest that I won. So you can make, if you thought the 16 magazines were right, please keep that to yourself. And then the only other thing I have to say about this is there are some scene breaks. I will take a not too long dramatic pause when we get to those. Also, I reread this yesterday, and there is a lot more sex in this than I thought. So either I'm sorry or you're welcome. It's whatever you feel. So, okay. So this is The Thing Is Only Known, Leonard's Known. After sex, while Leonard's knotting the condom and tossing it in the wastebasket, Claire examines the cage on his nightstand. The bars form a swirling chrysalis of ivory, their ends curved like sharp, devilish tails. It's the size of a box lantern. His heart hovers inside, a dry brown-red fist. It looks underfed and has clearly been there a long time. Tiny rust-colored driblets are worn into the cage's white bottom. She rolls back toward him. I love your cage. He grunts. My mother got it in North Africa sometime after I was born. It's probably made of elephant tusk. When did you lose yours? I don't remember. He's picking at his belly button. The sheets have managed to settle just like in the movies, low on his hips, just above the highest curls of his pubic hair. She leans closer to him and considers covering her breasts so they're equally cinematic. Also, Claire thinks that, despite being perky and firm, they're way too small. But he, unbeknownst to her, thinks they're perfect. Oh, come on, she says. Everyone knows when they lost theirs. I'm not everyone. I remember it so sharply, she says. She tells him about her own gilt bird cage that her parents affixed to her bedroom ceiling so it dangled from the corner. They gave it to her when she turned 12. Despite her parents' objections, she crowded it with stuffed animals, a blue teddy bear, a pink bunny, a coal gray monkey. When she lost her heart, it dripped blood onto their heads like they'd been whacked by something sharp and heavy. I was 14. He was my freshman English teacher. She'd fallen in love when he recited Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. At the time, Claire didn't realize how ugly the woman in question was. She could only focus on her teacher's lilting voice, the slight curl of Scottish brogue, the way his eyes fell on hers and didn't move for 2 lines. When he walked past her desk, she smelled his cologne, a swirl of vanilla and almond. He complimented her penmanship and ability to cite properly, and her heart swelled against her ribs. But then, a week later, when he made casual reference to a wife, she felt it, the quick slurp, the silent vacuum as her heart fled her body. She'd managed not to cry out in the middle of their discussion of Lord of the Flies, but in between periods, she ran to the bathroom and sobbed as she perched atop a closed toilet seat. If nothing else, pain, really a dull discomfort, the way one's tongue can't stop poking at a freshly chipped tooth, confirmed that she had, in fact, been in love, unlike all those other girls she saw on television and film who had lusty crushes on their untouchable elders. I remember it clear as day, she says. Well, I don't, he says. She thinks about rolling over on top of him, revving him up for another round. But she's recently quit birth control, and the thought of having to pause while he slides over to the nightstand to pull out another condom squashes her sudden rush of sexual want. She settles for reaching up a hand and raking it against the back of his head. Leonard leans back so his skull crushes her knuckles against the wall, a sharp pain rising in her fingers. He says nothing, and soon enough, Claire slithers out of the bed and goes. I would say that. But of course Leonard remembers. She was right. Everyone does. He went so long without losing his heart that he thought something might be wrong with him. He'd read about sociopaths with cages that were empty in perpetuity and thought for a while that he might be one. His girlfriends in high school and college would pounce on him, give him blowjobs and kinky sex, and then, right when they thought they'd pulled him in, would drag him onto the end of his bed for a terrible quiet talk, telling Leonard they didn't think things were working out. But instead of watching him, they would stare at his empty cage, waiting for his heart to materialize there. When it didn't, they started crying for real, and Leonard was the one to offer comfort with quick pats on the back, or quiet pats on the back. They would scream at him, call him ironically heartless, a fool, a jerk. Leonard, with his sandy hair and swimmer's build and punchy dimples, was a target, a creature for conquest, unable to be tamed and crushed. Until Leonard met Matthew Smythe, his creative writing professor, 7 years older but of much slighter build, with creamy dark eyes that reminded Leonard of an oil spill. He wound up at Smythe's house on the night of his 21st birthday, accidentally abandoned by his friends, head buzzy with beer and 4 Horsemen shots. Nothing happened between them until morning, when Smythe, who had slept on the couch, put his hand on Leonard's leg. It took only that touch for Leonard to feel it, a sudden, overwhelming sensation of water filling his lungs, igniting the rest of his body like he'd been shot. This was what had been missing, what those girls had not been able to touch, to root through his ribcage and find. Leonard knew it would end in heartbreak. Where else could it go? But he'd leapt up in the bed where Smythe had let him sleep off the booze. Leonard kissed his professor square on the mouth, feeling the minty tingle of Matthew's teeth and tongue envelop everything from his hard palate down to his lungs. They carried on for 7 months, reading books in bed, sharing plates of fried shrimp a town over, sledding down a hill deep in the countryside. Then things snapped. One comment from Smythe about one of Leonard's workshop stories, something about it sounding familiar, like one of his own. The professor had meant it as an aside, a post-coital observation, but Leonard felt it immediately, the slip-slide feeling of a tongue slurping something out of him at this backside accusation of mimicry. He threw on his clothes and dashed home, feeling like a man blazoned as an imposter, to find his heart, wet and weepy, perched inside the cage he had hauled around with him for years, suddenly full, where he was not. She calls him. A week has passed, and she's achy. His heart, shriveled and dried, has haunted Claire in her dreams, where she runs through fields of chaff and sunflowers and biting corn stalks while it lumbers behind her like a slow, gargantuan brown bear. Claire wakes panting, her heart throbbing in its cage. She brought it with her when she moved out of her parents' house, climbing a stepladder and careful as she unscrewed the hanging chain, bits of paint and popcorn ceiling drizzling her hair like snowfall. The cage was shockingly light in her hands, like an empty egg carton. Her heart was still wet and alive, burbling in time to the pulse she could feel at her inner elbow and jugular. Leonard doesn't answer, so he leaves him a voicemail. Tries to sound bright and casual, interested in meeting up. She doesn't say date. They haven't gone on a date. They met at a bar. It wasn't Leonard's broad back or the pudge of bicep muscle spilling from his well-fitting polo shirt that caught her attention. He was smiling sadly into the mirror behind the midless liquors, like he was remembering the death of a beloved pet, his mouth half occluded by a bottle of Absolute. She wanted to know what he was mourning, so she slid up to him and pretended to accidentally knock shoulders, even though there was plenty of room on either side. She hopes he'll call back. She can feel the slide of his large hands on the small of her back, the way his palms cupped her breasts with cool, kind pressure. Her favorite moments were when they switched positions, him rolling on top of her or turning her on her side, and she caught that glimmer of sadness in his eyes. She wanted to extinguish it, fill him with a burst of light, as though he'd swallowed a sun and its heat was running through his veins. She wanted to sit in bed and press slices of orange and handfuls of blueberries into his mouth, wipe the dripping juices off his lips, then lick his fingers clean. Her heart, in its cage, thumps and thumps. It took Claire many years to ask her parents about the loss of their hearts. It felt like the kind of story children should not ask adults, the stark interior intimacy too scratchy, achy. She was 19 by the time she mustered the courage. They were sitting at dinner, scalloped potatoes and ribeyes. Hers was weeping red juice across her plate like the meat had sprung a leak, and it reminded her of the sorrowful heart of her still sobbing tiny tears into the bottom of her birdcage, blood seeping into the feet and bellies of her stuffed animals. When she crowed out her question, bleating like a sad little billy goat, her parents froze, father chewing on a tough bite of steak, mother gulping a gnashed mouthful of potato. They swallowed in unison and looked at one another, and she recognized her mistake. How to talk about the first painful love of one's life right in front of the person you devoted yourself to. But they answered, her father first. A girl named Heather he met at a Christian summer camp, which struck Claire as odd, as her parents had never taken her to church and didn't own a single crucifix. They didn't even celebrate Easter. They had fallen hopelessly in love, sneaking out of their cabins to skinny dip in the lake, sluicing warm summer water over their bodies, which shone with the youthful tightness in the moonlight. After 2 weeks of this, they finally climbed out, dripping and shivering, and laid down together on the little strip of sandy beach and made love. They were caught by a counselor who was smoking a furtive cigarette. He was only 2 years older than them, but authority made him seem so much more malevolent and wizened, and he tattled. They were segregated from each other, sent home without a chance to speak again. This was before cell phones, her father said. I had no way of finding her, didn't even know her last name. His cage was wooden, homemade by Claire's grandfather, a carpenter who died of black lung before she was born. The cage sat atop her father's bureau, tucked behind a silken display box full of cufflinks. When her parents weren't home, she stared at the cage, mesmerized by the glazed shine of her father's wet heart. I met your mother not a year after that, he said. Finish your dinner, her mother said, looking down at the 3/4 of steak left stewing in its juices on Claire's plate. But what about you? Oh, her mother said, it's not nearly as romantic. I slept with a boy and he died 3 days later in a car accident. That's horrible, Claire said. The lake of red on her plate made her queasy. It was, but I have moved on. Her mother kept her cage in the back of the walk-in closet, behind the tin of Christmas bows she reused every year. The cage was metal, painted black, the bars no thicker than chopsticks. She didn't look at that one much, worried that she might break it if she lifted it up. As a result, Claire never quite knew what her mother was feeling. She didn't like the mystery. Sometimes, Smythe gave Leonard the key to his house, and Leonard would go there and wait. He'd remove his clothes, leaving one piece in each room, then lie down on the bed, sheet twirled over his lower body, toes sticking out the end. But other times, he would go and search for his teacher's cage, wandering room to room. There were only 5 of them, including the bathroom, but he could never find her. Hearts usually gave off some tiny heat signals and a smell like the lowest depths of a cavern, salty and brisk. But the professor's whole house reeked of vanilla, capfuls baked for hours in the oven, the sweet dessert aroma infused in the couch cushions and shower and pantry. Leonard rummaged through the linen closet, pulled aside the hanging clothes in the bedroom, knocked away the spare toilet paper rolls under the bathroom sink. No heart. He never asked. He convinced himself that he and Smythe were still both whole, falling in love for the first time together like a pair of synchronized divers splashing down at once. After sex, Leonard would press his hand to his teacher's chest, but he knew the thump would be there either way. The body still pulsed and vibrated even after the heart fled. Smythe, with his nipples rounded by dusty circlets of blonde hair, was narrow and lean. His ribs were pressed up against his skin like a xylophone, and Leonard played his fingers along that warm top flesh that reminded him of a stretchy pull the animal felt. Smythe never told Leonard his own story of loss, but he'd written a book full of loss. Stories of body parts gone haywire, lungs that shriveled to gills, tongues that leapt from mouths after saying so many words, a woman who could chop her muscles off and regrow them, saving civilization from a horrible famine. When Leonard bought a copy, he stayed perched in his bed for an entire afternoon, legs propping up the thick book, and devoured Smythe's stories, imagining his own body undergoing these gruesome transformations. When Clint calls, Leonard does not answer. His phone vibrates against his ribs, the screen of bright spotlight. It shudders one more time, announcing a voicemail. He listens. Her voice is like a Gregorian chant, moving up and down with a rhythmic warble. The thought of seeing her again leaves him neither chagrined nor thrilled. Ever since Smythe, he makes comparisons. He hitches and hesitates. He suffers a column of nausea up and down his body. Periodically, his heart, in its cage, twitches, spurts a tiny squelch of fresh blood onto the dry body. He finally calls her back. She doesn't answer, but she rings back immediately. They agree to meet the next night. When he hangs up, he stares at the ceiling, then looks over at his heart, mute and still as stone. He's late, mumbling apologies when he sits down across from her at the small table. I realized I mixed up the time when I was in the shower. Is that why you have a crust of shampoo on your right ear? She laughs when he fumbles, unable to find the phantom sub. Something about his vulnerable flailing makes Claire's chest cavity lurch. She can almost picture her heart spasming in its cage. So this is what people call a nightclub, he says, looking around. They're seated in the highest of 3 terraces of small tables, each one lit by a tiny curved lamp. At the lowest point in the room is a small stage where a woman in a tight black dress that shimmers with sequins is standing. She's dolled up, makeup bright and splattery, lips painted a shining dahlia red. A pianist in tails plays a tinkly tune in the background. The music is soft, like a radio a room away. I think they're technically call themselves a jazz band. A waitress in a white Oxford and a skinny black tie cinched in a perfect four-in-hand knot takes their order. She'll have a gin and tonic. He hesitates, then asks for a bourbon on the rocks. What kind would you like? Something smooth, Leonard says. The waitress disappears, empty drink tray tucked under her arm. They sit in silence. He looks over the low wall separating them from the terrace below. Every table is set for 2. Couples stare at one another, legs finding each other under tables. Fingers dance around cocktail straws and rims of glasses. He sees 2 men holding hands, one leaning in to kiss the other. The waitress returns with their drinks. His a viscous blood orange color, Claire sparkling clear with a black swizzle stick poked into the ice and a slice of lime on the rim. She fiddles with the stick before taking a sip, her lips glossed by the bubbling liquid. He takes a deep pull from her bourbon. Maker's mark, he thinks, but he really has no clue. Provides a cool burn, acidic and fiery as it goes down. Smooth, she asks. Huh? Is it smooth, like you asked? He nods. The pianist starts in on a slow rendition of How High the Moon. Across the table, Claire leans back and closes her eyes. I love this song, she says, especially slowed down. She sways in her seat, the fabric of her blouse bunching. They have one more round of drinks, then go back to her place, a small efficiency apartment in a renovated hotel, one of those turn-of-the-century buildings with a gated elevator and inactive sconces. Her apartment smells of 4 o'clocks, and the walls are dotted with black and white photographs. He doesn't ask her about them or the standing piano that takes up half of one of the walls. As he removes his jacket, she unfurls a Murphy bed, its sheets miraculously tight and unwrinkled. She sits down on the end and he joins her. Without preamble, she kisses him, her tongue pulsing against his teeth. Their sex is silent and slow, a hot grinding, the only noise the slightest squeak of the bed beneath their swaying bodies. She starts on top of him and then nudges him to roll her over. He is, if nothing else, attuned to her signals, knows when to slow down and speed up from the changes in the pressure of her hands on his back. They come at the same time, pressed close together, the built-up tension unknotting. A bead of sweat slithers from his nose to her breast like a droplet of blood. Wow, she says when Leonard flops on his back. He notices for the first time a garish light fixture in the shape of a 4-cornered candelabra. It dangles above them with a threatening gleam, like it might crash down and smash them both to nothing. He sits up and stretches, rotating a shoulder, old impingement from swimming that flares up from time to time. Her birdcage is set on a small table in the apartment's corner, next to a frazzled leather love seat, the only other furniture besides a ramshackle coffee table. The heart inside is cast in shadow, but you can see its thick liveliness, how it thumps in and out like a bellows. He glances down at her. The rhythm fits the rise and fall of her chest. She smiles at him and reaches out a hand. He doesn't take it. Instead, he flips back the moistened sheets and claws at the condom and asks if she has any tissues. She does not feel foolish or stupid when her period doesn't come. The nausea is a tender warmth billowing up her throat, each retch a notched heat that grinds through her ribs. She calls him after she takes the test, not once or twice, but 3 times, twin blue lines appearing on the little plastic stick each time. She keeps them all next to her bathroom sink, lined up like the little windows on a slot machine. He doesn't answer, and she doesn't leave a message. Such a cruel thing, it seems, to announce that way. She remembers the way he turned away, how he slipped away sometime while she slept, so she doesn't call again. She lets herself bloom without him. After the first ultrasound, where the doctor smears her with cold jelly and shows her the blurry, shuddering photo of her insides, Claire buys herself the stethoscope. She lies on her bed and places the cold metal disc on her stomach and listens to her body shifting and whooshing like there's a whole ocean in there, gurgling back and forth. The noise carries into her dreams, sloshing and calling like a whale song. When she wakes, she presses her hands to her stomach, the skin taut and hard like plastic. She feels like a doll. Claire calls her parents with the announcement. They let a heavy silence lay on the phone, so she hangs up and does not answer when they call back twice, 3 times 4, a doughy voicemail from her mother exhorting her to please, please, please talk to them. Her voice is a whiny jelly. The baby sections of stores are bright and white and fresh. She loads a cart with diapers, a bouncy seat, a tiny wooden rocker, bibs, bottles, pacifiers, little booty pajamas in gender-neutral greens and oranges and yellows. The cashier coos over every purchase, as though she's never seen such small articles of clothing. The bill is exorbitant, but Claire hands over a credit card without blink or hesitation. At home, she fills up the apartment, draping stacks of folded clothing atop the piano, assembling the crib herself with a Phillips head screwdriver she excavates from a kitchen drawer. When she takes breaks, swiping at her sweaty forehead, she's always hot now, no matter what. She looks at her golden birdcage. Her heart, steeped in juicy red, glows like a newborn sun. Last dramatic pause. Thanks again. The end. No, just kidding. His phone rings over and over. When he silences it, it buzzes and buzzes, the vibrations grating in his teeth. Missed calls, 5, 10, 15 in a row. She doesn't leave him a voicemail. It has been 12 weeks since he last saw her. As he left, he passed an old woman in Claire's building's hallway who said hello to him with some Eastern European accent. It filled him with shame. He never went back, and Claire only called once, until this sudden barrage. When he finally answers, her voice is so gummy and high-pitched he can hardly understand a word. She's blubbering, an out-of-control flood of words. He listens, and as he puts together the pieces, Leonard feels pinging pain, or whatever, in his groin that travels up and bursts through his belly button like a worm piercing loamy earth. He tells her he'll be right there, but it takes him 30 minutes, traffic snarled by road construction and a pair of 3-car pileups. The night bursts with twinkling red and blue light flashing off windshields and windows. Her apartment is unlocked. He's greeted by a maelstrom of diapers, their packaging ripped open. They've been sent flying around the room, gathered on every surface. Little booties dot the floor like hailstones. A crib has been smashed, leaving a long laceration in the wall. Claire lies in the bathroom, curled on her side. He sees it in the toilet, a red mass the size of a strawberry, bobbing in thick liquid that reminds him of a laboratory experiment. Nausea wells through his windpipe. Leonard steps out of the room and leans against the piano, where a trio of baby books has toppled down onto the keys and bench. His head is swirling like he's stood up too fast. He rushes to the bed and plucks up the top sheet and a pillow and goes to her, cradling Claire's head on the downy puff. What happened, he says, but before she can say anything, he drapes the sheet over her like a coroner covering the dead. He tucks it up to her chin. Claire's face is squinched tight, lines like the swirling etch of desert sand pressed across her face. Do you need to go to a hospital? Her eyes flash open, the familiar electric blue of a berry popsicle. She says nothing, but she darts a hand out from beneath the sheet and catches his wrist. Her fingers are cold. She shakes her head, hair swirling on the pillow. Was it mine? She nods. You didn't tell me. Not an accusation or a question, but a simple fact that hangs fat in the humid air. He wanders out of the bathroom and finds himself standing in front of her birdcage. Her heart is bulging, dropping thick, viscous blood onto the heads of her stuffed animals. It beats like it is being jackhammered. Leonard reaches out his fingers as if he's at the Humane Society and a kitten is smashing its head against the bars to be rubbed. His hand can't squash far enough inside to reach her heart, but he can feel the pulsing warmth that radiates from its contracting surface. He feels like he's found the center of something, but he's not sure what. He returns to the bathroom. She's shifted her position so she's looking up at him. Her body is still curled in a comma shape, and he collapses his gangly swimmer's limbs to fit in next to her. The linoleum is cold on his left ear. I'm sorry, he says. She looses her arm again and pushes it against his sternum, palm flat between the plates of his pecs. He feels nothing, a hollow warbling in his chest cavity. She closes her eyes and starts to hum, a single sustained sound that grows and grows, burning into the walls and the porcelain toilet and sink, bouncing through the pipes and air vents. A song of one endless note that catches inside him and doesn't let go. It rattles and ribs at his lungs and spleen, coursing through the open space. He places his hand over hers, feels the barely there rhythm in her song, and even if it's just for the moment, joins in. Yeah. I don't know if she wandered off to, but I think we have time. If anyone has questions from your Danielle that we can field. And we also have books, they have books that you can purchase and have us sign when we're done. So I'm gonna sit down and then Tracy can ask a question.
Since we're in the children's section, I wanna know what your favorite books were when you were a kid. Both of you.
There we go. There might be people watching virtually, so we want to talk. My answer to this is quick and easy. I was obsessed with the Animorphs book series. I think like all 54 of them, except for a few, are still in my parents' basement, plus all the offshoots. That was like... Oh, I also read many times this ghost story called Wait Till Helen Comes. I read it like 4 times. When I was probably too young for, like, it's part of the accelerated reader program, but it was like about a ghost who tries to drown like 10-year-olds. So good job, accelerated reader.
It's really hard to pick a favorite, so I'm literally just gonna say like what comes to my mind. I loved Anne of Green Gables, and then I also loved the Alice series. I think by Curtis Reynolds Naylor. Is that right? Is that the right author? I don't know. It was like a coming of age series. Alice was really awkward. I really felt that when I was like 11 or 12 going through puberty. So yeah. Thanks for asking us a question. Another question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When do you write and where do you write?
I have a 5-year-old and a full-time job, so I write in between like random times, you know, when he's taking a nap, or I do a lot of writing right after a walk. I tend to find that walking is a really good sort of way to clear my head, and then I just I'll write in the morning, I'll write in the evening, but I tend to write more in the morning. And I have a notes app where I keep like lines and ideas and stuff, and then I will transfer that to my computer where like I'm not someone who can write in their notes app. I know some people write fully in their notes app, and that's just not a thing for me.
Yeah, same. The first time I ever had a student writing in class on their phone, I yelled at them because I thought they were just playing on their phone instead of doing the writing prompt, and she looked horrified. She's like, "No, I'm writing the thing," and it was like a block of text. It's like, "Oh, can't do that." I write in the morning, and I revise in the afternoon. Not usually the same thing that I write, but I can only really write in the morning these days. And then if I have something I'm editing, I do that in the afternoon. And I used during COVID, I would write at my dining room table because my internet didn't like to work in my office, and I was teaching on remotely, so I kind of need to be out, and I just started living out there. But then I finally cleaned my office at my house. Now I'm writing there. And now my internet is good in there. Well, that's great. 4 years later, but I write in there. Thanks, John. Oh, the question was when, and where do you write? For the people who might be asking wondering why we're talking about this. Anybody else? Any burning questions? Well, thank you. I don't know. Oh, okay. There's the time. I was wondering where the clock was. Well, thank you again for being here this evening. If you grab a book from, you pay for it. Take it. They probably won't like that. But if you would like to buy a copy of either of our books, they are up there at the very front. Yeah, well, at the cash register. And Danielle and I would both be happy to sign them, and also peruse this lovely bookstore and support your local literary community. And thank you all so very much for coming. I know it's a Tuesday evening and it's not always easy to get out during the week, but Danielle and I both very much appreciate you being here. So thanks so much. And thanks to anyone who's watching. It could be normal. I could be talking about this. Yeah, thank you, Shelley, in the future, because you're on a beach instead of here. Boo, boo, Shelley.
Yeah.
I know.
I want to say one of my friends.
I just so weird. Well, it took a long time for me to actually write. Well, so when I was like 10. It was literally like,
Yeah. It was like a block.
She writes weird. Awful.
Like in the hallway.
Her problem for so she's written a couple novels. I think she's a her big one.
I will honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
She's never heard of me. So I probably have felt it has been, it's been a while. It's from other pieces of butterfly link.
Katie, have you heard of it?
That was basically.
Why did I get scared of these kids' books?
I don't think so. She's not Kate.
No.
Yeah, no, it's 100% Kate. And then I did mention this one. Oh, I bet she'll love to have you write things.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I wrote that in my course. Yeah. Thank you so much. LOR. Thank you so much. Thank you. I know what you're saying. Oh, that's right. I was like, no.
There are a few things Mom has done that you have not that relates to me.
Just like,
You know, to be the mom of it.
There was that. I also owed her for forgetting in 8th grade during graduation.
You obviously didn't get to the last.
Yeah.
So much.
I don't remember that.
You weren't there.
And what's your name? Your Nick? How do you all know this?
Gloria is a former
That is
student of mine.
You ever came to those parties?
Oh, no, you're fine.
That's true.
That's all. I it's a lot of times he has them when my son's with his dad.
Gloria did the Associate of Fine Arts program at community college. And is now about to finish the MPhil.
He followed me.
I did, yeah, I did follow her.
Wait, so you teach?
I don't teach it.
Okay, and you're also a writer? What do you write? Like
Here it's everything, and
fiction?
she's very good at all.
Yes.
She's a, she did
Do you
all of
have
it.
a? Yeah. Poetry.
Trying really hard to finish much publish.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Hi, Danny, thanks.
Do I have to take a step?
And then I know societal.
Are they like that?
Oh my gosh, I just
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, yeah, I'll do that.
And ADD, absolutely.
I want to read whatever comes out. Yeah, all all that. Especially right.
Thank you.
This is my first hand.
It's already.
Run faster. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what was your fastest? Good job.
Oh my God. So it's really more.
And I'm like,
You put 10 more. That probably. For 30 minutes. They talked about, they apparently got comes to negotiations, it's like, no, it is.
Yeah, no,
Over the explanation shows like how like, AutoZone. I was like, do you really need this one story? That's shit out here. And like, the point is, like, clearly the stories that they want, they're trying to help. I don't know, like, the average related, it's like right down the street, which is much less the patient. For whatever reason. Like, I don't want to email AutoZone and be like, look, this may
I'm
look
just
like
checking there's no upstairs.
but they are so in the right, just expand your operation. Don't give it up. Well, I keep joking that I need to write, you know the whole history of AutoZone. So there's little AutoZone. So you guys notice this little this year. Like Lindenwood owns landscape area, like everything's surrounding.
Oh.
So they put up landscaping to like block the sight line of the library. Because they've been trying to buy that property forever. And that one AutoZone has refused for like 25 years to get bought. And so they're like in a war.
I go inside.
And apparently AutoZone is probably becoming negotiating. So I don't know these friends. I guess it's like a retailing of Romeo's Juliet, but it's between a Lindenwood administrator and an AutoZone manager. Like they know they must hate each other, but between the bushes, that's the only thing they like communicate. I'm still working out the details. Also, I have a million other things that
Go
are
on hold. And still the only person for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they get got it, they don't force you to return the books.
Just right there. But it's just so
And then
it's
it's
another
like,
stuff.
that's why all these people are there.
Because I like to
One
see
of the
all of them and
hands off
everything.
of
Oh, it's so like thank you.
So all these old people in there return is how much social security you get. Sign your form and you're out of here.
Is that a question?
All these people are just coming
I was gonna say.
yeah, they're a little more complicated than 90% of these
The
people.
last year's.
Well, there's a funny story.
So anyway, that was kind of all these people.
In 8th grade, we had like a graduation. For some reason, my we had a valedictorian and a salutatorian.
Yeah.
Even though it was Barbie, so I was the valedictorian. I gave a speech at graduation.
Great.
Yeah. And there were 3 salutatorians. So I just stand up there.
Oh, God.
But then somehow calculated this was great. It was like, you're all your years there. And I didn't write anything down, and I thanked my dad. I'm gonna give it.
Oh, my gosh, thank you so much.
Would you like me to sign that? Thank you so much for coming. It's okay. I just I recognize the voice. This
I just want to make sure, like, that's, but.
very cool. Well, thanks so much. Okay, definitely. Oh, what term?
It's like, I know, we still love it. You can
Remember where you said Oh, did I? Well, okay, yeah, that does sound like a that's nice. If you ever want to go to, that's probably the easiest around here. Well, So, yeah, I already have 2 wolves running. Yeah. Appreciate it. I'll tell Jamie you.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I see what has
Oh, yeah.
Can you all tell me about oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't, the book was like, she just came. You all know each other. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I know, I was like, I get to meet some people. Oh yeah, we're like, yeah. So nice to meet you. You go.
Some of the writers I work with have been very. You learn how to not be in
Anyway, what are we doing, folks? What's our stuff?
run your own business. Oh, this is really annoying. What this person wants. And they probably don't realize it's really annoying. How would you know?
Well, someone chopped the young man.
I'm not.
Yeah. You're all upset that they didn't give you any credit. So what does that mean, middle reader? Is that an age
Oh,
group?
third through 5th grade. It's middle grade.
Middle grade.
I would say some of these go up to like 7th grade.
Well, it is a bit of a fluky.
So below young adult.
Yes, yeah.
Which we also have our discussion of like. Well, we should, that we need to do.
Oh, okay. Third to 5th grade, that is what I sort of heard.
That's what Joe said.
Third to 5th.
Going to Iowa?
It's quite popular all of a sudden.
So it's more purpley this time than when my colors.
What do you get? Well, that's what I.
Yeah.
No blue, so.
He is adjusting, so he is downstairs.
Are you feeling all the rest of it? I will see it every now and then.
Oh no, I'm collecting.
Seated, he's like, all of these look at this. Like, yeah. Or the.
Where is it?
I'm in government. Frequently, like, I don't know where you're at. Like, cool, bud, cool.
Yeah.
If you go to-
Shane, thank you again so much for having me. I so appreciate it. As I was telling
And then you go around.
people when Allie emailed me
I love
her